guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. Now this is a video I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's something I've thought about for years, and that's the topic of compilations. And now, there are, as you know, millions of compilations out there. I mean, every major artist, even minor artists, have comps. But I'm talking about those kind of rare compilations that sort of take on a character of their own. That are become, for whatever reason, more than just a collection of hits, which is what a lot of compilations are supposed to be. But those rare compilations where just the choices are just right, they create their own kind of mood, and like I said, become something more. And so I like to talk about those type of compilations. Now, I'm not talking about collections of rarities, someone releasing a set of b-sides, or some artists are so prolific they have a ton of stuff in the vaults, and then they throw a bunch of outtakes and whatever on a. I'm not talking about that kind of compilation. That's a different animal. I'm talking about you know the hits collections, the comps that come out there that try and represent an artist by some of their most well-known songs, and then maybe they throw in some deeper cuts that are great and representative. Those type of compilations, either a career overview, or sometimes it's just certain artists stint on a certain label or whatever. Okay, those are the type of things that I'm talking about here. And when does one of those compilations become something more, become maybe an essential element of that artist's catalog? So I've picked actually 11. I was going to do 10, but then I had whittled it down and I was down at 11. It's like, I can't cut any of these and this is stupid. So we're going to do a top 11. Okay. Just the comps that really had a huge impact on me. I guess people buy compilations for one of two reasons, right? One, maybe you just want the hits. Maybe you just you're not interested in diving any deeper, and you just like some of these radio hits. That's fine. That's fine. But I think, and what's often been my case, is they're like a gateway, an introduction. You know, you're a young kid, you've heard of this Beatles band, you've heard of these Rolling Stones. What's that all about? And so you go find a good collection to kind of introduce yourself, and then you're hooked. Then you go buy everything, right? I mean, at least that's what's been my case with a lot of these bands. I think most of these comps in my top 10 are sort of the gateway type. I guess there is a third option. Sometimes when a compilation really is the best option, where maybe an artist is great, at making individual songs, but they never put together just an awesome album. Maybe their albums are spotty, and maybe a nicely picked compilation is perfect for that artist. That can be the case too. Or if it's a genre or a time period when singles were the predominant thing, like soul music in the 60s, for instance. A lot of times it was kind of the singles and less the albums. I don't know, there's different reasons people have comps, but I got my top 10 here, so let's get into it. Or top 11. And my number 11, these are going to be familiar to a lot, and I'm cheating a little bit. I've got two, but they're kind of companion pieces. It's my list, I can cheat a little bit. But in one slot, I am having the Beatles 1962 to 66, and then the Beatles 1967 to 70. I mean, these really kind of companion pieces go hand in hand, even with the artwork, right? Which I love. This is one of those early publicity shots that they did, and then they went back way later and kind of recreated the shot. And of course, each of these pictures is appropriate for the time period on these records. Both of these were put out, I guess, kind of as cash grabs, but 1973. But if you're somebody of my vintage, of my age, a little too young to have been around when the Beatles were actually putting out their albums. I was born in the early 70s, so it was at some point in the 80s when I was starting to discover and wanted to explore the Beatles. I mean, for people of my age, these were the starting points for so many people. It was for me. And then of course you go buy everything and dive into it. But now they're not perfect, but they really do have their own characters, and pretty fantastic. Both of them were doubles, so I guess if you buy both of them, it's kind of like you have like 4 album introduction to the Beatles, which I think is pretty good. And like I said, it's not perfect. For instance, on this one, there's like a ton of tracks off of Rubber Soul. How many tracks are off of Rubber Soul here? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Really? No, seven. I think seven tracks off of Rubber Soul and one track off of Revolver. I, I seem to remember reading somewhere it had something to do with royalties or something. But anyway, that aside, these were sort of the perfect gateways into the Beatles for me, and I think for a lot of people of my generation. Number 10. Now, number 10 is one of these records, one of these comps, is kind of perfect for a band that has pretty small discography. Like this band, I think only put out 4 records of, not including like live stuff and all that, but like 4 records with some studio stuff on them. And if you can put together a really tight collection like that for a band that has a pretty small discography, it can be pretty potent. And for me, Strange Brew, The Best of Cream, is one of those records. This is this is one of these things I really like because it's only, at least on the vinyl version, I think they have expanded CD versions, but on the vinyl version it's 10 tracks. Does it have every great Cream song? No, but it is a fantastic tight introduction and just a killer listen from start to finish. Badge, Sunshine of Your Love, Crossroads, White Room, Born Under a Bad Sign, Strange Brew, Anyone for Tennis, which is an odd choice, but it's kind of a quirky thing. I Feel Free, Politician, Spoonful. I think it's it's a studio version of Spoonful, by the way. But just if you're trying to say, okay, here's what Cream was all about, this is a great introduction to that. All right, at number 9, I'm going to do another twofer here because these two kind of go together so well. One of them I got on vinyl, the other one I just have on CD here. But The Cure, Standing on a Beach, the singles. Wow, this is so strong. I mean, again, if you're of my generation, I mean, who didn't have this collection, right? I mean, it's just killer. I mean, it's got a lot of tunes on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Like 13 tracks, which is pretty good for a single album. 13 tracks on there, just boom, 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 and just focusing on the singles as a great companion piece, which I would love to get this on vinyl. I've just never seen it on vinyl, but is Galore, which sort of picks up. So this goes through. Well, this was put out in 1986, and so this sort of picks up after that. Really kind of picks up with stuff like Just Like Heaven and Hot Hot Hot, and then goes into the disintegration stuff into about the mid 90s when this came out. So, but put these together, this and this, and you have just a perfect set of those great Cure singles, which are so strong and so powerful. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't. I mean, you should go get the essential Cure albums too, but these are fantastic listens, and I don't know, they kind of work as both. I mean, yeah, they're kind of great gateways, but they're also just, even if you got most of the Cure, I think I have all the Cure stuff either on album or CD, and I still put those comps on because those are so strong. Number 8's really interesting. Now on vinyl here, it's kind of like a box set, and I'm not really including box sets in this thing, but I'm making an exception here. This is Pink Floyd's Echoes. It's on 4 records, but if you buy it on CD, it's a 2-disc set. So I think that's legitimate. I'm counting it because on CD it's 2 CDs, but it's kind of stretched out on 4 records here. But Echoes, this is one of these rare comps that actually sort of takes these songs and does something else with them. I mean, it's still the songs, but the way it's edited together, it's really fascinating because they have, it's kind of mixed up chronologically. You got Syd Barrett era, with the Gilmore albums in the 80s and 90s, and then of course the classic era in the 70s, and it's all mixed and jumbled together. and the song but they kind of put it together, they sequenced it to where these songs sort of fade in and out of each other, and it's almost like its own interesting little work, even though it's made from previously released material. I think it's fascinating. The I think the big treat here is, and it takes up a whole side of one of the records, is they edit together "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," the complete "Shine On You Crazy Diamond." If you're familiar with "Wish You Were Here," which is the album that song is off of, they split it, right? It opens with a big long section, and then the album closes with a big long section. It really works artistically on "Wish You Were Here," but it is kind of cool to have the whole piece together, where you can just listen to it in one continuous sitting, and like I said, it takes up a whole side of vinyl, on this, and that's really cool to have. So this is one of these rare comps that it's all familiar material if you know the band, but it really presents it in kind of an interesting, unique way. That's cool. All right, what's next? Number 7 is, I actually did a review of this a couple weeks ago or something, so I don't need to say a whole lot about it. But if you remember, I did a review on and the Animals retrospective. It had been out on CD for years and years, but it just came out on vinyl, so that's why I was so excited about it. And this is the example of, for me at least, I don't think the Animals ever really put together great full albums, and so to have kind of a two record set, just making almost all of the right choices is incredibly strong, because like just individual songs, like song for song, they're one of the strongest bands in out of the '60s. But it's just their full albums, I don't think really were were consistent, and so a really great comp for these guys is essential, and I think this does the job. All right, let's see, where were we? Number 6. Well, number 6 and number 5 are the same band, but different compilations. Now, I know I've been cheating and putting together these companion pieces a little bit earlier, but these two compilations really cover such different periods of this band. I mean, I can't cheat with these. I mean, I've got to just have them as separate entries on the list. So at 6 and 5, I do have the Kinks, one of my all-time favorite bands. We'll have a Kinks week at some point. It's got so much to so much to work with there. I've got to figure out how I put that together. But at number 6, I have this. This was put out by Rhino. It's the Kinks' greatest hits, and it's basically that first era. The first, covering really the period of the first 3 to 4 records. Okay, which, well, Face to Face is amazing, but before that, the first 3 records are kind of spotty for the Kinks, honestly, I think. And they were doing the very British thing at the time of a lot of their really great singles weren't on their albums, and this is just an amazing collect. There are a bunch of Kinks collections from this era, but this one gets it right. This one gets it the most right, I think. There's let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's about 14 tracks on the vinyl. If you get the CD version, there's like 20 something. Either version, I was real excited to finally find this on vinyl about a year ago. I've been looking for it for years, and I just found it sitting somewhere. But it's in some used bin at some store. It was great. But either version, it's just essential. I mean, those early Kinks singles are just I mean, You Really Got Me, All Day and All the Night, Till the End of the Day, Tired of Waiting for You, Well Respected Man, Dedicated Follower of Fashion, and it closes with Sunny Afternoon, which is amazing, and others. So this basically has a bunch of singles and B-sides, and it is so potent. I mean, this is important versus, I think, those first 3 Kink records. Get this. I mean, that, God, is so good. Now, for me, and number 5, we'll talk about, like I said, I'll do a Kinks week. I am a huge fan of the Kinks on Arista records from about 1977 till mid '80s when they were on Arista Records. That was my gateway. That was actually when I got into the Kinks, was that era, and then I was able to explore everything else. I can't tell you how important this compilation has been to me in my life. Come Dancing with the Kinks, the best of the Kinks, 1977, 1988. Two record, double album, makes almost all the right choices from that Arista period. Man, this is just so strong. Like I said, I for whatever reason I just love that period of the Kinks. I know it's not their most critically acclaimed. It's probably not the most favorite for a lot of people. I just love those albums. I really do. I mean, I love all the Kinks, but that period is just so special to me. And maybe you don't want to buy. I think it was about they put out about seven records in that era. Maybe you don't want to go buy all those records. This is an incredible one stop to really get a taste of the best of what's off those records. So I'm gonna do a little sidetrack here. Where did I put the? Oh, here it is. The Kinks are kind of interesting because they put out a lot of really good compilations, and they had real distinct eras, and they jumped from label to label a little bit. You can actually like create sort of this through line just with Kinks compilations if you want, and I'll just show it to you real quick. You could start with this, the Kinks' greatest hits for that early stuff. Then you go to a much beloved compilation, the double album Kink Chronicles, which covers that mid to late into the early 70s period, which is kind of their most beloved period, right? And this is a really kind of quirky, interesting compilation. You can see I found a vinyl version that's pretty damaged, the sleeves and all that, but the records are in great shape. It's just but I found it for a great price. So, but this it's really kind of interesting. It's put together. You have rarities, and then of course some essential tracks. A great introduction to that period. Then you get into their very difficult kind of early to mid '70s period. This Celluloid Heroes, Kinks' greatest, is a fantastic sort of pulling the great songs from a period that honestly has a lot of not great songs. So this is great. Then you can pick up the Come Dancing with the Kinks to hit that Arista period. And if you really want, although this is not essential, but like I said, I'm just trying to connect the dots here, you have the Kinks Lost and Found, which covers 86 to 89. They're a really short stint on MCA. And so it's kind of interesting. With all those comps I just showed you, you cover the whole Kinks career except for their very last album, which is terrible. So don't worry about it. Okay. But as far as Kinks, that Rhino greatest hits is my number 6, and then Come Dancing with the Kinks is my number 5. Number 4 is one of these essential compilations. You all know that Neil Young is my favorite artist. He does have a greatest hits, which I don't think is very good. But yeah. But this Neil Young Decade. One, I just love the cover art. There you go. There's kind of nice fold out here. I don't know. Great photos and then some liner notes written by Neil. It's a 3-record set, and it's just what it sounds like. Covers his first decade of music, which is essential. So it includes Buffalo Springfield material and some rare Buffalo Springfield material, and goes up through about American Stars and Bars, Long May You Run period. So just essential. I mean, I have everything Neil's ever put out, but this is still such a tight, great collection. How many of you guys have this? I mean, I feel like so many people have this, and it was essential for me when I was first getting into Neil Young, and I got this, and I was like, wow, there's so much to explore here. Okay, what do we got now? Number 3. Number 3, I think, is something that a lot of people have. Creedence Clearwater Revival Chronicle. Double album, 20 hits. I mean, John Fogerty is one of the greatest at just coming up with just fantastic radio hits. And this is 20 songs. Each one of them is like a knockout punch in the ring. I mean, just boom, 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 boom. Now, I don't think you should stop here. I think the Creedence album, we'll do a CCR video at some point soon, but the Creedence albums are essential. But man, it's tough to get better than this. And just as a little bonus, there's a companion piece, Chronicle Volume 2, which is another 20 tracks, kind of reaches deeper into the album cuts. I mean, these two together, it's pretty potent stuff. All right. Oh, wow. My number 2. How many people had this? The Rolling Stones, Hot Rocks. This really brings back memories. Man, how much did I listen to this? And it is the perfect, it's 1964 to 1971, double album. Perfect introduction. I mean, there's plenty of important songs that aren't on here, but perfect introduction to this period. And wow, this is, I mean, who had this? Everyone had this, right? And, I mean, it introduced me to the Stones. I think one of my brothers gave this to me. It's like, the world of the Rolling Stones right here. Now, again, as a bonus, they did put out more Hot Rocks, Big Hits and Phased Cookies, another double album. And this is cool. This is a cool companion piece to this because it covers the same period. But I'm just going to show you the inside there. But like side 1 goes real early, a little bit earlier than a lot of what's on here. Side 2 and 3 are just sort of more tracks, kind of deeper album cuts from sort of the prime, kind of late 60s, mid to late 60s into the early 70s that this really covers the most. And then what's cool on side 4 of this are some rarities, some B-sides, kind of singles only. So it just put these two together, but obviously this is the important one. But put these two together and you have this kind of interesting four record set of the Stones sort of in their prime period, right? Number 1, for me, the greatest compilation ever. And oh, actually, wait, one more thing on the Stones. If you want to pick up where those left off, I highly recommend Rewind. Now, this is out of print and it's been sort of reissued in under different titles with different track listings. And this is 1971 to 84. So this is a single record that really picks some fantastic songs from that 70s into the early 80s period. And it's a nice sort of pick up right where Hot Rocks leaves off. Just wanted to mention that. But my number 1, this is a perfect compilation. It's got all those elements I was talking about. This band only put out 3 records. All 3 records aren't perfect. And this comp makes almost all the right choices. And it plays wonderfully from start to finish, has its own feel to it, and it's pretty concise. I think there's 12 tracks on it. And so it doesn't overstay its welcome. I'm talking about Buffalo Springfield Retrospective. That great band that did not reach its full potential, where Neil Young and Stephen Stills both got their start. And yeah, I mean, just killer stuff. Their best record is their second one. I should have pulled it on, whatever. But Buffalo Springfield again is their best record. I guess editor can throw it up there. But even with that, there's like 5 tracks that are just transcendently great, and then the rest of the record is good, but a noticeable fall from those 5 tracks. All 5 of those essential tracks from again were picked for this, and then kind of cherry pick the best stuff from their first and third records as well. I mean, this is flawless. Are there some good Buffalo Springfield songs that aren't on here? Yes, but I mean, I'm a huge fan of this band. I have everything they put out. I have even that box set they put out. A band with 3 records puts out a 4 CD box set, but I even have that. But when push comes to shove, and say you at gunpoint you took away all my Buffalo Springfield albums and just left me with this, I'd be okay. because this is so amazing. This, oh, this is so good. I mean, yeah, go listen to this. It just shows you what amazing talent they, Richie Fury also, right? I mean, you had three great songwriters, Stills, Young, and Fury, and wow, it's just for what it's worth, Mr. Soul, Sit Down, I Think I Love You, Kind Woman, Bluebird, On the Way Home. That's side one. Side two, Nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing, Broken Arrow, Rock and Roll Woman, I Am a Child, Go and Say Goodbye, and Expecting to Fly. What a great closer, too, Expecting to Fly. One of the most beautiful songs Neil Young ever did. Oh, wow. It's just, this is perfect. You know, if this would be in my top 10 favorite albums of all time if I was allowed to put compilations in a top in a a list of favorite 100 or 500 albums or whatever, and comps were okay. This would be in my top 10. This is so essential to me. All right, guys. Well, that's cool. So obviously in the comments, what are some essential compilations that have been important to you? I know I've left a billion off. I could have talked about Bob Marley's Legend, of course. I mean, that one was huge. But I mean, there's so many. There's so many. But in the comments, what are some compilations that you think go beyond just being a collection of hits and are just that great? All right. Well, we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks. Please do subscribe. It really helps us out. Hit the like button on the videos. Hit the bell for notifications, for whenever we're putting out new material. And we'll see you next time.